We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. I have seen some reports of protests concerning the lockdown conditions, and it dismays me that the press is complicit in the government's effort to brand the protesters as extremists. Standing up for freedom is not extremism. Tyranny is the extreme position. Man is born free, and those who would restrict man's freedom bear a heavy burden. When reports of a new disease in China first surfaced around New Year's, it seemed a genuine cause for concern, if not alarm. Chinese people were reportedly getting so sick the Chinese government was literally dragging them off the streets and out of their homes and then disappearing them. There were reports of record amounts of smoke from cremations, and that the Chinese government didn't even always wait until people were dead before forcing them into the incinerators. The reasonable response to this was to elevate and get a bird's eye view of the situation and begin an investigation of the facts. It has now been several months. In the meantime, there has been unopposed programming in the mass media, which has created a panic in the public. This, in turn, has been used to persuade the public that America would be safer as a virtual prison. We are well past the moment to reassess the initial reaction. We must reconcile some hard realities. First, the government has provided no evidence whatsoever that the Chinese virus is more contagious than the ordinary flu. Second, the government has provided no evidence whatsoever that the Chinese virus is more lethal than the ordinary flu. Third, the government has provided no evidence whatsoever that there is a reliable test for the Chinese virus, let alone the efficacy of any such testing in formulating public policy. Fourth, the government has provided no evidence whatsoever that social distancing, mask wearing, and having no job is in any way more effective in preventing disease than the precautions everyone should take during flu season. These include washing your hands, trying not to touch your face in public, and staying home when you're sick. I mention this because when the government seeks to infringe upon the free man's rights, it must have a reason which it can justify with evidence. Further, the government's evidence must be competent, and it must be able to withstand fair and reasonable criticism. In a democracy, public policy must follow open debate. Public policy, particularly public policy which will oppress freedom, cannot be imposed unilaterally. Likewise, when the government seeks to infringe upon the free man's rights, it must do so in the least restrictive way possible to achieve its objective. In this instance, we the people have had our liberty infringed to a degree unprecedented in American history, to a degree that would make the Founding Fathers puke. And this has all happened without any competent evidence or due process or open argument on the merits. Instead, the government imposed a lockdown upon specious procedures. Shamefully, most of the public enthusiastically accepted the lockdown like sheep. This insanity must come to an end. Take the issue with the masks, which were made a matter of executive edict about 1 month into the lockdown. The government's first statement about masks was an order not to buy any. The Surgeon General advised that masks are not effective in protecting the public from the Chinese flu. Recently, the European Center for Disease Prevention and Control issued a report on mask wearing by the public. The report was that there is no evidence that non-medical face masks are effective protection against respiratory infection. The report also highlighted the fact that the vast majority of the public doesn't use face masks correctly. To do so requires that the hands be sanitized before putting on or taking off a mask. In addition, masks should be washed after each use. Instead, people use the same filthy face covering day after day, which is more likely to spread disease than to prevent it. In short, the public has been performing a pantomime. Not only are the conditions of the lockdown unjustified from the perspective of constitutional law, but also from the perspective of public health. I can't help but ask, what purpose does the pantomime serve? Obviously, the folks who created the virus and the mass panic want to sell us a vaccine. In fact, if you listen for the music in the background, the tune has changed. We're not flattening the curve anymore. Now we are waiting for the vaccine. One of Robert Kennedy's charities, Children's Health Defense, published a report about some of the risks associated with the proposed vaccine. Among these risks is that the proposed vaccine will be unlike an ordinary vaccine. the proposed vaccine will be DNA, which will be delivered into the recipient's cells by using electrical current. This means that the recipients will become genetically modified human beings. One big problem with this is that we have no idea what the long-term harm is. GMO hasn't worked out very well for corn or wheat, so it follows that people should be very cautious about getting themselves GMO'd. Perhaps a bit less obvious is that all of the oppression is quite useful in maintaining control of the public while the economy is being reset. It's a hard reality that while some of the public might get $1,200 someday, the rich, the multinational corporations, and the banks are guaranteed trillions in credit to buy whatever they don't already own. The sick thing being that the working man will be taxed both for his imaginary $1,200 and for all of the trillions being transferred to the rich. And as I have mentioned previously, the devastation of the American and global economies is collateral damage in the invisible war in which the global financial interests seek to destroy democracy and to install an international dictatorship. This is a war for our freedom, and we are losing. Finally, the pantomime should also be considered as a drill. The folks who impose the lockdown don't care who wears a mask and who doesn't. What they want is to know why those who do, do, and why those who don't. This information will assist them in calibrating even more senseless rules sometime later. I have a friend who had to go to jail. He came from a good home, so eventually he asked the guard for some dental floss. He was told that dental floss is not allowed in the jail. He asked why. The guard told him that prisoners use dental floss to cut through the bars of their cells. He observed that there weren't any bars in the jail, only metal doors. The guard said that dental floss is not allowed in the jail. In conclusion, I can't help but also ask, what will happen if the people ever realize that they have been fooled? My hope is that they will be angry and that it won't be too late to act, that it won't be too late to stand up for freedom. On the other hand, quite often when a person admits that he has been fooled, he also feels that he is admitting to having been stupid. This can create the kind of cognitive dissonance in which he may be more willing to tolerate the loss of his freedom than to admit, even to himself, that he was wrong. It is well past time to bring this insanity to an end.